Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Last session, Mawlana talked about the importance of having a guide on the path, having spiritual direction. So Mawlana was giving advice to Hasamuddin Chalabi. He said, go and bring 2 or more pieces of paper, sheets of paper. I'm going to tell you about the Pir. I'm going to tell you about the spiritual guide. And then he said, Pir tabistan o khalqan tir mah. The spiritual guide is the summer. So the Pir is the summer. Real summer is the spiritual guide. And everyone else is in winter, is in autumn. And it's the guide who brings that warmth and light. That's what the guide does inwardly and spiritually. And then Maulana said, Kardam bakht javan ra naam Pir. When I'm talking about Pir, elder, I'm not talking about age. I'm talking about someone who's connected to the timeless, someone who's connected to the truth, which is beyond time. And that's just like timeless wine. It's a wine that's been there from pre-eternity. And that's the old wine. That's the strong wine. And he says, Pir ra bugzin ke bi pirin safar hast bas pur afat o khof o khatar. Without the guide, this path is a dangerous path. Even a path that you've traveled so many times, without a guide, you can't travel that path. How about a path that you don't know? So in this passage, which we're going to read today, it's about the advice that the Prophet ﷺ, he gave to Sayyidina Ali, that everyone else chooses an act of devotion, an act of worship. Some people choose prayer, some people choose fasting, some people choose charity, but you, Ya Ali, you choose devotion to a guide. You choose me. And by this, you'll be Pish Qadam Bashi. You will be the first to arrive. So your act of devotion is associating with the wise servant of Allah, with the chosen servant of Allah. And by this act of devotion, you'll be ahead of all others. And so inshallah, we'll read this section today. Brother Abdurrahman, would you mind?
Prophet said to Ali, O Ali, you are the lion of God. You are a courageous knight. But do not even rely upon your lion-heartedness. Come into the shade of the palm tree of hope. Come into the shade of the sage, whom no conveyor can carry off from the way. His shadow on the earth is like Mount Qaf. His spirit is the Simur that circles exceedingly high. If I should tell of his qualities until the resurrection, do not seek any conclusion and end to them. The Son has veiled himself in man. Apprehend, and God knows best what is right. O Ali, above all devotional acts in the way, choose the shadow of the servant of God. Everyone took refuge in some act of devotion and discovered for themselves some means of deliverance. Take refuge in the shadow of the sage, that you may escape from the enemy that opposes in secret. Of all acts of devotion, this is the best for you. You will gain precedence over every one that has outstripped. When the Pir has accepted you, take heed, surrender yourself, go, like Moses, under the authority of Khidr. Bear patiently whatever is done by Khidr, who is without hypocrisy, in order that Khidr may not say, Begone, this is the parting. Though he hold the boat, do not speak a word. Though he kills a child, do not tear your hair. God has declared that his hand is as his own. Since he gave out, the hand of God is above their hands. The hand of God causes him to die and brings him to life. What of life? He makes him a spirit everlasting. If anyone, by rare exception, traversed this way alone, he arrived through the help of the hearts of the Pirs. The hand of the Pir is not withdrawn from the absent. His hand is naught but the grasp of God. Inasmuch as they give such a robe of honor to the absent, undoubtedly the present are better than the absent. Since they are bestowing food on the absent, see what bounties they must lay before one who is present. Where is one that girds himself before them to one that is outside the door? When you have chosen your Pir, be not faint-hearted. Be not weak as water and crumbly as earth. If enraged by every blow, then how will you become a mirror without being polished?
Alhamdulillah. Thank you. Any reflections on the whole passage? Any thoughts? Yes, Kenzie.
We're reading it, and it's also the night of Ghadir, so it's just
Occasionally.
it coincides.
Indeed, indeed. So yeah, in Persian we have a proverb: "Be dar migam ke divar beshnave." You tell the door, but you want the walls to hear. So Sayyidina Ali doesn't need this advice, but Mawlana is saying to us, don't think that you have arrived. Don't think that you know what is there to know. Even if you're Ali, and he's the one that the Prophet said about him, "You are to me what Harun was to Musa, except that there is no prophet after me." Just like all the priests in the Jewish tradition, all the priests came from Harun, descendants of Harun. The awliya, they come either spiritual descendants of Sayyidina Ali or biological descendants of Sayyidina Ali. So he's the trunk of the tree, of the spiritual tree. And yet, Mawlana is saying, even if you're Sayyidina Ali, you always need a guide. So the Prophet says, you're the lion of God, you're courageous, but don't rely on yourself. As Hafiz says, تکیه بر تقوا و دانش در طریقت کافری است. Relying on your piety, relying on your knowledge in the tariqah, that's kufr. So come under the shade of the palm tree of hope. Come into the shade of the sage. And then Mawlana says, this sage is زَلَّهُ أَنْدَرْ زَمِينٌ چون کوه قاف. His shadow is like Mount Qaf. So if you're looking for Mount Qaf, if you're looking for Simorg, that's the sage. That's this man of God. در بشر روپوش کرده است آفتاب is the sun, divine sun, that's cloaked in man, that's veiled himself in man. But understand this correctly, and God knows what is best. Yes, brother.
The warning against relying on yourself and its acts, our actions, our devotions is significant and important, because we can be devout, we can pray, fast, do all of these things, but we need something. There is still a lot of ourself in those things. So yeah, that's like a broken, like a very poor walking stick, crutch. It's very. That seems an important thing.
Absolutely. Yes, Ali.
Yeah, I mean, what can we say about Imam Ali, right? Words fall short of describing his character. But of course, as the Prophet ﷺ has said that if all the trees could become pen and all the oceans would become ink, they would not be able to describe the character of Ali ibn Abi Talib. There is an interesting story about one of the wars that Imam Ali fought alongside the Prophet, that then was in the middle of the battle, and it was, the war was waging on, and suddenly one companion saw that Imam Ali was just started to pray because it was time to pray. So he said to him, "Ya Ali, what are you doing? We are in the middle of the war. The enemy is attacking us. You should not be praying. You should be fighting." And then Imam Ali answered him by saying that if we are not fighting to pray, then what are we fighting for?
Indeed.
So,
Allah. Yes.
That is, I think, the essence of his character to some degree.
Indeed. Yes. And there is another narration that in the middle of the battle, someone asks Imam Ali a question about the unity of Allah, Tawheed of Allah. And then everyone shouts at him, we're in the middle of the battle. What is this theological question you're asking? And then he says, no, that's why we're fighting. And then he gives an answer right in the middle of the battle. That's why, here Mawlana says, everyone else chooses an act of devotion. You, Ya Ali, you choose aql, aqli, right? A wise person, a sage. So of all acts of devotion, that is best for you, is companionship with a sage, companionship with a wise person. And then he gives the example of Musa and Khidr. So that's the story in Surah Al-Kahf, which is all about this, which is all about spiritual direction, which is all about the guidance of a teacher. Are you familiar with the story in Surah Al-Kahf? the story goes, someone comes to Musa and asks, is there anyone on earth who is wiser than you, who knows more than you? And Moses says, I don't know anyone who's wiser than me. Not out of arrogance, but objectively, he doesn't know of anyone who's wiser, right? Who has more knowledge. And that night, Allah reveals to him, God reveals to him, there is a wise servant, there's a servant of us who has more knowledge than you. And Musa asks, where is he? And he says, Allah Ta'ala says he's at the junction of the two seas, Majma'ul Bahrain. And that's where, as the Sufis comment on it, that's where the spiritual world and the physical world meet, right? Or the sea of law and the way, the tariqah and the sharia meet. And yes, some commentators say it's in Tanja in Morocco. So Musa sets out on this journey, and he has a fish in his basket. It's a dead fish, salted fish. They have the fish for lunch, and then they rest somewhere. There's a rock, and they rest. And then later on in the journey, Moses is hungry, and he says to his servant, go and bring that fish. We're going to eat. And then he says, when we were at that rock, something miraculous happened, and I forgot to tell you. That dead fish became alive and was revived and went into the sea. And it was so mysterious, so miraculous. And Moses says, that's what we were seeking. We were looking for a sign to guide us to that man. And that's the sign. So they go back. They go back to that rock and they find Khidr. And then Moses says to Khidr, can I follow you? Attabi'uka, follow. So that's the spiritual following, imitation, emulation, which is different from just obeying. Can I follow you and you can teach me some of your knowledge? And then he says, you can't be patient with me. I'm going to do things that are beyond your capacity to understand. I'm going to do things that you will find unbearable. And Moses says, no, I will be patient. Inshallah, I will be patient and I will not disobey you. So that's the master-disciple relationship. And yeah, Mawlana says, you should do the same. You should do what Moses did without hypocrisy. You should be sincere. So that Khidr doesn't say, Hada Faraq. That's what happens at the end of the story. 3 times, there are 3 incidents. Each time Moses objects, and then Khidr says, at the end, the last incident, Khidr says, this is parting. This is Hada Faraq, Bayni wa Baynik. And Moses says, that was the most bitter. I've gone through all different incidents of Pharaoh and sufferings. That was the most bitter moment of my life when Khidr says, this is the separation. So Mawlana is saying, do have that patience. There might be things that superficially, outwardly, you may look at it and think that's objectionable. But no, look at the inner aspect of it, you will see that there is a deep wisdom in it. So be patient. Yes, Kenza.
Yeah, if I may, in one interpretation that I liked, that I read once, when Khidr, I mean, we think it's Khidr, it could be, just tradition.
The Quran doesn't name it.
Yeah, Quran doesn't name anybody, but basically, let's say it's Khidr. One of the explanation of why, it's always in 3s, but other than that, when in the last part, he just told Moses, Khalas, that's it. Like, you just don't get it because you can't be quiet and just be patient. It was exactly when Moses asked we could have gotten some food from the village. So the idea here is that suddenly the senses took over. So it's the dunya that takes over because it's hunger, but hunger as in hunger for food, something material, rather than the pursuit of spiritual food or spiritual sustenance. And that explanation always stayed with me. So every time I read it, it kind of makes sense in a way.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's a mystical interpretation. The story is they arrive at a village and they ask for food, and the villagers don't give them food. And the mystical interpretation is because the food of the earth, the physical food is haram ala ahl al-akhirah. The people of akhirah can't accept food from the villagers. from the villages of this dunya. And but Khidr sees a wall that's about to collapse, and he builds that wall again, repairs that wall. And Musa is hungry. Musa is hungry, so he says to Khidr, at least we've built this wall. We could ask for a reward. We could ask for a wage. But then Khidr says, this is spiritual work. You can't ask for wages for something that's spiritual. And then immediately he says, هَذَا فَرَاغُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنِكَ. This is the parting between you and me. And then later on he gives the ta'wil, right, the interpretation for each of these things. And he says there are two orphans. There are two orphans who had a treasure that their parents had left for them. And I built this wall so that their treasure is protected. And they can, when they reach maturity, they can access their treasure. And again, Sufi commentators say it's the treasure of ma'rifah. It's the treasure of wisdom that's accessed when the wall of the nafs is repaired. That's when that treasure is protected, and people can access the treasure that's left for them. That's a treasure of wisdom that will guide them to their source. Yes, but
just sort of looking at the story and listening to friends speak, it's also seemingly about disrupting the chain of causation that we usually attribute to things. If I do this, then that, and so therefore, A follows from B, A then B then C, and so on and so forth. But in reality, it's only apparently that way. It's the hand of God that makes it so. So there's a higher order of things, and you can only access that, it seems, as you said a moment ago, I think, if you can tear down the wall of the nafs that sits around the treasure within. So it's there's something about that, and something about these getting beyond your assumptions.
Indeed. And that's why everything that Khidr does in that story, there's an outward layer and then there is an inward layer. And then later on he explains why he did those things, and Moses didn't know. So Mawlana says, دست او را حق چو دست خویش خواند. The hand of the Waliullah is the hand of Allah. This is in the hadith, that I become his eye, I become his sight, I become his hearing, I become his hand. And also in the Qur'an, right? In the Qur'an, when the Sahaba gave bay'ah, allegiance to the Prophet, ﷺ, it says, those who give allegiance to you are giving allegiance to Allah. Those who are giving their hands to you, Ya Rasulullah, Ya Muhammad, they're giving their hands to God. They're shaking hands with Allah. The hand of God is above their hands. The hand of Allah has powers that other hands don't. The hand of Allah can give you life, can cause death, and can give everlasting life. So this is a death that brings about everlasting life. It's the death to the ego. Just like the Khidr story, when he killed that boy, again, the Sufi commentators, they say that boy is the nafs al-ammara. But then that's replaced by another life. So he causes him to die, but then he brings another life, an everlasting life. Then Mawlana says, هر که تنها نادرن این ره برید هم به اون همت پیران رسید. Now there are people who by exception, so that's not the rule, that's the exception, who traverse this way alone. So, in Tasawwuf they're called Uwaisi Sufis. They don't have a live Sufi master, but they have that connection with the souls of other past masters. They say that Fariduddin Attar was one of them. So Hallaj, after 150 years, appeared to Attar. His spirit became his guide. Mawlana himself, when he was about to die, he says, I'm leaving, but I'll be your guide. So remember me, and I can be your guide. So that's hemmat, right? That spiritual power is there to guide people. دست پیر از غایبان کوتاه نیست. So those who are withdrawn, they can still benefit from the barakah, from the grace of spiritual masters. And if those who are absent can receive these robes of honors, what about those who are present? So the grace, the barakah reaches everyone, those who are there and those who are not there. Those who are coming later generations, they can still benefit from the barakah. They can still benefit from the guidance. Those who are guests, they will receive bounties, and those who are outside, they will also receive food, the spiritual food from these guides. So then Mawlana says, Chun guzidi pir nazuk del nabash. If you've chosen a teacher, if you've chosen a pir, don't be faint-hearted, don't be delicate, right? Don't get offended so easily. You need to work on yourself. Don't be weak, because a true teacher, a true master has to be strict, has to be tough to help you to train your ego. So don't be enraged. Don't be enraged by every blow. It's just like a mirror. If a mirror wants to be polished, it has to go through that process. It has to go through blows and polishing. So if you want to refine your soul, you need to go through that as well. So don't be delicate, right? Don't get enraged so easily. Yes, Badaber.
Bismillah. I just wanted to share a little story from when I, as it were, officially took hand with my own sheikh. So the sikher on, put your head on his lap, he makes dua. It asks Hazrati Pir to guide and those sorts of things. And it was so very beautiful, so very lovely. I got up, I was kind of in a daze. I sat back down where I was sat before, and the first thing that I thought was, and it was, I have seen the Prophet, and it's was the thing that came, not with the eyes, but in the hand over hand over hand. Did that very strong sense of, in some way, somehow being remotely connected to the Bayat of Ridwan, somehow, you know, hand over hand over hand. And that, I think, so two things strike me from that. One is the hand over hand, you know, and then the second thing is deep connection. A true connection won't make your vision stop at the physical person talking to, you know, your immediate physical teacher. It will take you, in this case, to Hazrati Pir, and then to the Prophet, and so on, and so forth. It goes beyond themselves. You know, then the sheikh is not interested in you worshipping them, but they're interested in helping you arrive where you need to go. So those are two things that struck me as important.
Indeed, Allah. Okay, so I guess we could read another section. Kenza, if you don't mind.
Sure, with pleasure. That was beautiful, by the way, what you shared, Abdurrahman. Thank you. All right, Bismillah. How the man of Qazvin was tattooing the figure of a lion in blue on his shoulders and repenting because of needle pricks. I like this one. Hear from the narrator this story about the way and custom of the people of Qazvin. They tattoo themselves in blue with the point of a needle on body and hand and shoulders so as to suffer no injury. A certain man of Qazvin went to a barber and said, "Tattoo me. Do it charmingly." "Oh, valiant sir," said he, "what figure shall I tattoo?" He answered, "Prick in the figure of a furious lion. Leo is my ascendant. Tattoo the form of a lion, exert yourself, prick in plenty of the blue dye." "On what place," he asked, "shall I tattoo you?" He said, "Prick the design of the beauty on my shoulder blade." As soon as he began to stick in the needle, the pain of it settled in the shoulder, and the hero fell a moaning. "Oh, illustrious one, you have killed me. What figure are you tattooing?" "Why," said he, "you bade me do a lion." "What limb," asked the other, "did you begin with?" "I have begun at the tail," said he. "Oh, my dear friend," he cried, "leave out the tail." My breath is stopped by the lion's tail and rump. His rump has tightly closed my windpipe. Let the lion be without a tail, O lion maker, for my heart is faint from the blows of the needle. The person commenced to prick in on another part without fear, without favor, without mercy. He yelled, "Which of his members is this?" "This is his ear, my good man," the barber replied. "Oh, doctor," said he, "let him have no ears. Omit the ears and cut the frock short." The barber began to insert in another part. Once more the man of Qazvin set out to wail, saying, "What is the member now on this third spot?" He replied, "This is the lion's belly, my dear sir." "Let the lion have no belly," said he. "What need of a belly for the picture that is full?" The barber became distraught and remained in great bewilderment. He stood for a long time with his fingers in his teeth. Then the master flung the needle to the ground and said, "Has this happened to anyone in the world? Who saw a lion without tail and head and belly? God himself did not create a lion like this. Oh, brother, endure the pain of the lancet, that you may escape from the poison of your nafs. For sky and sun and moon bow in worship to the people who have escaped from self-existence. Anyone in whose body the miscreant self has died, sun and cloud obey his command. Since his heart has learned to light the candle, the sun cannot burn him." God has made mention of the rising sun as turning aside like that from their cave. The thorn becomes entirely beautiful like the rose in the sight of the particular that is going towards the universal. What is to exalt and glorify God, to deem yourself despicable and as dust? What is to learn the knowledge of God's unity, to consume yourself in the presence of the One? If you wish to shine like day, burn up your night like self-existence. Melt away your existence as copper in the elixir, in the being of him who fosters existence. You have fastened both your hands tight on I and we. All this ruin is caused by dualism. It's a
Beautiful
nice
story, isn't it?
Yeah, I like it.
So yeah, there's no lion without an ear, a tail, and mane, right? But that's the story of people who want spiritual states, but they don't want to sacrifice anything. They don't want to go through any pain. They don't want to give up anything. So that's not possible. That's not possible. As Mawlana says, if you want to become a mirror, you have to be polished first. You have to go through that process first. So ای برادر صبر کن بر درد نیش. You need to go through this pain, right? If you want to escape the poison of your nafs, that's the way. And those who have escaped from the nafs, then the whole the sky and the sun and the moon, they fell prostrate before these people. And yeah, Mawlana says the best way to glorify Allah, the best way to glorify God is to break yourself. چیست تعظیم خدا? What is it to glorify Allah? Glorifying Allah is to humble yourself. Is خویشتن را خاک و خاکی داشتن. You should humble yourself like dust. Otherwise, there's no point in glorifying Allah. If you glorify yourself, you can't glorify Allah. چیست توحید خدا? What is knowing, realizing the unity of Allah? Is realizing that you're nothing. Because Allah is all that there is. Otherwise, it's just theory. If you just say Allah is one, but you think that you're someone too, that's not, that's just theory. That's just something you know in your head. But realizing that Allah is one is realizing that you're nothing. Burning yourself. That's the true Tawheed. And if you want to become like day, shine like day, you need to burn yourself. You need to burn your ego. Burn your nightlife existence. And then it's the elixir, the kimia, like the alchemy happens. That's when your copper becomes gold. When you melt your copper, your false existence, who you think you are. در من و ما سخت کردستی دو دست. But you cling to I and we. You cling to I, which is individual pride, individualism, or we, collective pride, right? I don't know, you attach yourself to a nationality or this group mentality. I and we, manoma, that's pride, in either case, whether it's individual, you think you, the individual, are better than everyone else, or you're someone, or the group mentality. In either case, you've attached yourself to pride. And all ruin is because of this. All ruin is caused by this. Forgetting that there's only one, forgetting that there's only Allah, it's only Tawheed. Once you forget that and you get caught up in these identities and I and we and pride, that's where all the ruin comes from. All the problems, they all come from that. Yes, Kans.
Yeah, if I may. One of the things that's very interesting about this melt away your existence as copper in the elixir is there are two interpretation about alchemy when it comes to the image of alchemy. Is one, some see it as transforming copper into gold. And another way of looking at it, which personally I like, is it's basically you put this ore, this metal in the elixir, and it cleans away the copper and only leaves the gold. With the meaning that you already have the gold. It's just that your life, your I, your we is like all these layers, like an onion, let's say, you know? So you have to kind of peel away all these layers of onion to get to the pearl or the gold. And I always like that image. Rather than actually being transformative, it's more cleaning away, like polishing a mirror.
Cleansing, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Purifying.
And that's how I read this part. So you melt away the I and the we and the nafs, and the gold is left after that.
Indeed. You know, that's more in line with what the Qur'an says. The Qur'an says the fitra, you know, you all have the fitra, you all have that gold, you're all gold. But that's covered. It's covered by earth. But what you need to do is you need to purify that. You need to unearth that gold or polish that mirror. Yes, Anij.
Yeah, I think we also read in another part where Mawlana says that the ugliness that you see in others is the ugliness that's reflected by your own soul. So polish yourself instead of concentrating on others and their shortcomings.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, I think in Nahj al-Balagha, Imam Ali mentions that if you only consider your own shortcomings, you will not have time to think about the shortcomings of others.
Indeed. Yes, but Abdullah.
I and we are really difficult to get beyond the identification with of me with the clothing, so to speak, that I wear, and then the we really does lie under so many of the world's problems and our own problems. It's Allah.
Indeed.
Sorry, just the what is it to learn the knowledge of God's unity, to consume yourself in the presence of the one? What's the word for presence there?
Let me have a look. This line, right? In the presence of the one. So in the Persian, it says khishtan ra pish wahid. So pish is before, in front of, right?
Okay, like before the one. You know,
before, exactly, before the one. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that knowledge is a realized knowledge. It's just like the moth that enters the fire and is burnt. It's because you know, in Tasawwuf, you have the knowledge that fire exists. That's the, you know, they call ilm al-yaqeen, and then seeing the fire and then being consumed in the fire. That's the highest knowledge. That's what Mawlana is talking about here. Haqq al-yaqeen, this knowledge of certainty.
I think just looking at it now, I think it's because until we're able to consume ourselves in the presence of the one, until we are able to consume ourselves, listen to me speak. Anyway, before I get sidetracked, the point is one of I think it's the first sermon of Nahj al-Balagha. I think there are others who know it better who will correct me if I'm wrong, in which Imam Ali talks of God being one, but not in sense of number. It's not one in a series of things. And I think until we're able to die to self, whatever that means in reality, we can only ever really see things as through the prism of ourselves. And so therefore we count everything as a subsequent 1, 2, 3, even the source itself, which is a category error, doesn't really cover it, but which is the sort of fundamental issue. But if we are to burn up and disappear in the one, then we realize that the one is not number.
Indeed. Yeah.
So that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. You know, Sheikh Al-Alawi is Algerian Sufi Sheikh. He says, "Ya Allah, how can I say that you are one? Whereas realizing your oneness, I won't be there to say that you're one." So the real tawheed is when I'm not even there to say La ilaha illallah. But at the same time, how can I not say you're one? It's your oneness that has created me. All I am is because of your oneness. Yeah, Brother Abdullah.
So the effect of that is 2 things. First of all, it's bewilderment, but then it's a creative bewilderment. In essence, it's a bit like the Samazen who turns on the center point. You know, there's a stillness at the center in the midst of the whirling, and so it's a bewilderment that is creative and fruitful. I find it difficult to actually express what I'm trying to say, but Allah.
Yeah, as Mawlana says, religion is nothing other than bewilderment. Yes, Sahaj.
Sorry, I just had a question. So it's going back to the story of the man asking for the tattoo.
Yes.
What is the message there? So he's getting a tattoo of a lion, and it's too painful to bear it. Yeah. But he wants the lion. Is that the ego?
Yeah, so this man is a false pahlawan, right? He's not a real pahlawan. So he goes and says, I want a tattoo of a lion. And then the barber starts doing, you know, the tail of the lion. He says, no, that's too painful. Let the lion be without a tail.
Yeah.
Let the lion be without an ear. Mawlana is saying, if you want a lion tattoo, that's the process. You need to go through that pain. If you want your soul to be refined, if you want to get rid of your, to escape your ego, you need to go through discipline. You need to go through, you know, different practices that are bitter, that are hard. They're not pleasant, but you need to be patient. Because if you're not patient, you can't get the lion tattoo. You can't be a lion if you just want the easy way.
Sorry, he wants to have the lion without going through the pain. Yeah.
Exactly. And Mawlana says this is not the way to go. Yes, and
yeah, just also to answer a bit, Zahra, one of the things of the lion is that it comes right after the story of Ali. So it is, you know, Khidr. It's one of the names of Imam Ali. So it kind of relates to the previous story.
Yeah, Mawlana is contrasting the real lion of Allah with false false lion. Yes, but Abdullah.
One thing I see in myself, and I wonder if Mawlana is also pointing our attention to, is that tendency to, oh look, in order to be spiritual, let me wear this particular item of clothing, let me have this particular pendant, let me have this particular tattoo, you know, as if the tattoo itself is what you're really after.
Indeed.
And all that really in this story here is a symbol that you have undergone the hard pain of learning, for want of a better word. Yeah, it's not new age fluff. This is hard work.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah, you know, that's what new age spirituality is all about. Wanting spirituality, but not wanting the bitter, unpleasant discipline, not wanting to go through that. So Mawlana is saying this is not possible. Yes, Sahra.
Yeah, as you say, as it says, it's very difficult because we always see ourselves in somebody else without even realizing. Because I catch myself like I'm teaching my daughter. She was saying, "Did you see this person doing that?" And then I'm like, "It's best not to judge." And she's like, "Well, Mom, you're judging me for judging." It's just you just fall in your own trap, you know.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so the next story is, again, Mawlana is going to illustrate how that breaking the self works. And the next story is all about that. So that's the story of a wolf and a fox and a lion. They go together, they go hunting together. And yeah, that's a story about breaking the ego versus having the ego. So inshallah, we'll read that story next week.
It's a fantastic story.
Indeed.
Really, like Rumi, and this one, it's so refined when you read it really well. And I'm sure with your guidance, we'll do that next week. But it's just a really and funny and nice, and it's an amazing story.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, inshallah, let's move on to Divan Shams.